From tales of cruelty that range from harsh to barbaric, experiments and operations with no pain relief, rumours of ghosts that are said to be haunting the grounds, and tales of devil worshipping where sacrifices occurred. Welcome to Byberry Insane Asylum. Hey there, dissectors. Today's episode explores the dark history of Byberry Asylum, officially known as Philadelphia State Hospital. It's a place that many feel is more disturbing than the better-known Penhurst Asylum. To give you an idea of how bad this property is, here is a piece written about the place from a 1946 Life magazine expose. Thousands spend their days, often for weeks at a stretch, locked in devices euphemistically called restraints, muffs, mitts, wristlets, locks and straps, and restraining sheets. Hundreds are confined in lodges, bare, bedless rooms reeking with filth and feces. By day lit only through half-inch holes in steel-plated windows. By night, merely black tombs in which the cries of the insane echo unheard from the peeling plaster of the walls. Wow, now that sounds truly horrible. No one should be treated this inhumane. Bybury started out like many asylums of that era, good intentions until overcrowding occurs and more money is needed. It was a working farm which treated patients primarily by being out in the fresh air, working the land and gaining more confidence in themselves. The main buildings were built between 1907 and the mid-1920s. Later, between 1940 and 1953, newer buildings were built. This facility ended up having over 50 buildings, which included a male and female dormitory, kitchens, laundry, administration, an infirmary, morgue and a chapel. But like many things, when work is going well and everyone is cared for, it doesn't take much for nurses and doctors to become overwhelmed with the volume now coming through their doors. At one point, there were over 7,000 patients. Desperately in need of help, the hospital began hiring anyone who wanted a job, and I do mean anyone. No qualifications or experience was required, which ultimately ended in disaster. Nearly 3,000 people who chose not to fight in World War I, say for religious reasons, were sent to work at Bybury Asylum. These folks witnessed the atrocities that were going on inside the place, and because of their horror, they took secret photographs and reported on the inhumane living conditions. Due to understaffing, there was a criminally low ratio of nurses to patients. Because of this, patients were left unwashed and naked for weeks at a time. The patients' bedding was left unwashed by housekeeping, as they just didn't have the time or manpower to keep up. Floors throughout the asylum were sticky underfoot, and this was due to the vast amount of urine on the ground. With no help available, the staff took some desperate measures, and many were exceptionally cruel. As they couldn't keep an eye on them, many of the staff placed patients in restraints, not for a day or two, but months on end. They were basically left to rot. One such case happened in the 1980s when a 27-year-old patient named William was left restrained for more than 14 months and could possibly be as high as 3 years. Just imagine that for a moment. Up to 3 years, tied to a bed, unwashed, starved, cold, and there is nothing you can do about it. Your pleas for help are heard by no one. Help finally came for the young guy when his family got a lawyer named Stephen Gold. He wrote he was much better when he went in there 7 or 8 years ago. The courts found Bybury to be infringing on William's rights, and so was finally released from not only his bindings, but the walls of the asylum. Another story from 1970 stated that at least 57 deaths had occurred at the asylum, all due to patient neglect. There was also an open door policy at Bybury too, meaning that patients who were high functioning could come and go as a reward for good behaviour, and sadly, this too resulted in death. You see, many homeowners in the area would wake up in the morning, look out of their window, only to discover a patient asleep on their lawn. But other times, patients got themselves confused while outside. They'd wander off from the hospital and ultimately ended their own life as they wanted to go back but were lost. There is a tale of one patient wandering off in winter and after being unable to find help to get back to the hospital, died from exposure. But while on the grounds of the hospital, passers-by could see patients walking around the garden wearing hospital gowns or going naked. When the hospital finally shut down in 1990, many patients were sent to other hospitals, but others who had no families waiting for them or deemed not unwell enough were just set free, let to roam the streets with no place to go. In its time, Bybury boasted of having a special cure that they used on patients. The Philadelphia Record wrote a piece that describes this cure in detail. An attendant soaked a large towel in water. After wringing it out, he clamped the towel around the patient's neck. The attendant pulled the ends together and began to twist twist. First, he tightened the noose, then he gave the towel a slow turn to let the patient know what was in store for him. The patient begged for mercy, but the twisting continued. The patient's eyes bulged, his tongue swelled, his breathing laboured. At length, his body fell back on the bed. His face was a dreadful white, and he did not appear to be breathing. 15 minutes elapsed before he showed signs of returning to life. The patient was subdued. Some of the most terrible abuse came from treatments carried out with no pain relief, including pulling teeth and other surgeries. Larry Reel, a psychiatrist who trained at Bybury in the 1970s, reported a staff member giving stitches to a patient who suffered from schizophrenia. He asked why there were no pain meds given and was told, "These patients don't feel pain and so don't need medication." There were also medical trials carried out on the patients, with those subjected being forced to give their consent unwillingly. Hundreds of patients died from these trials. There were other cruel treatments performed on the patients at Byberry Asylum. These mistreatments often went unnoticed due to the chaos that surrounded them. Get this, one staff member was reported saying that other nurses would use caution when using weapons or fists upon patients. How inhumane can you be? In 1990, 2 orderlies confessed to strangling a patient until his eyes popped out of his head, blaming their actions on what we would now call PTSD from World War I. But instead of learning from this, the 2 men were never prosecuted and instead rewarded with a pay increase. Patients would also end the lives of other patients due to the asylum housing the criminally insane with less dangerous residents. The criminals were often the ones undergoing psychiatric testing instead of serving a prison sentence. Due to them being locked up with vulnerable people, there were many reports of murder, sexual assault and beatings taking place. One poor woman was attacked and killed on the property, and it was only discovered that she died after patients were seen carrying her teeth around with them. Then 2 more bodies were discovered on the hospital grounds in 1989, and one of these poor bodies had been missing for 5 months. It was very much out of sight, out of mind at Bybury. After decades of reported abuse and neglect, the facility was shut down finally on June 21st, 1990. That's a long time for mistreatment to go unpunished. The piece from Life magazine in 1946 stated, "As I passed through some of Bybury's wards, I was reminded of the pictures of the Nazi concentration camps. I entered a building swarming with naked humans, herded like cattle and treated with less concern, pervaded by a fetid odour so heavy, so nauseating that the stench seemed to have almost a physical existence of its own." I'm sure you can appreciate that tales of hauntings have also surrounded the property. Not surprising after the horrors that have occurred here. There have been reports of ghostly apparitions wandering into the woods, while other spirits return to the grounds. Investigators have heard screams of despair coming from the rotting property too, while others felt they were being watched or followed. There are tales of a mentally deranged individual haunting the tunnels beneath the properties. He has a large knife and seems to want to cut the throats of anyone he comes across. Gotta love dark urban legends. Local residents have reported often hearing an almost werewolf sound howling coming from the grounds at night. This was a truly barbaric place where cruelty was left to run wild for over 80 years. It was left to rot after its closure, with looters breaking into the premises only weeks after, stealing anything that wasn't pinned down. After them came the vandals who loved nothing more than smashing windows, starting fires or wandering the grounds. With this came explorers and tales of Satanists who were said to be sacrificing small animals, leaving their bodies inside to rot. Needless to say, the police visited the place often and are said to have found carcasses of dead animals. After Westrum Development purchased the property, hazardous materials like lead paint and asbestos were removed, followed by demolition of the buildings, starting with C buildings, then W, and lastly finishing with the N buildings. On June 14, 2006, a ceremony was held to celebrate the total demolition of the former Bybury Hospital. But you can erase a property, but not the ghosts of the past who want justice and the tales of mistreatment they suffered through. I honestly thought that this place was horrific and quite likely one of the worst stories I've heard. It gives me shivers thinking about it. What about you? How did you find today's episode? Did it fill you with pity for those mistreated or anger at the ones who should have known better? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I put a post out earlier stating that from this week I will also be adding a dark story time, a place where you can shut your eyes and drift off into a world of nightmares. Perfect for road trips, doing chores, or even just before bed. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, dissectors, stay safe out there.